Summer. It's a season we wait for all year. A time of long, golden days, warm nights, and the freedom to just be. It's the smell of sunscreen and freshly cut grass. It's the taste of ice cream melting down your hand. It's the sound of crickets singing you to sleep. Summer is supposed to be safe. It's supposed to be a time of happy memories. But what happens when the warmth of the sun is replaced by a cold dread? When the familiar sounds of the night start to feel like a warning? The truth is, behind the bright facade of summer, darkness can be waiting. In the quiet woods, in the placid water, even in the house next door. Today, we're going to pull back that curtain. These aren't legends you've heard before. These are 3 stories from people who looked into the heart of a perfect summer day and found something terrifying looking back. Our first story takes us to a place many of us dream of for a summer getaway, a quiet, isolated cabin on a lake. This account comes from a man named Ethan, who, back in college, took a job as a caretaker for a family friend's remote property in the Pacific Northwest. His only job was to keep the place tidy and enjoy the solitude. For the first 2 weeks, it was paradise. The cabin was old but well kept. The lake was crystal clear, deep, and cold. The nearest town was a 40-minute drive away. He was completely alone, and he loved it. But then, the small thing started. He'd be sitting on the dock in the middle of a windless day, the lake's surface like glass, and he'd see a single, powerful ripple spread out from the center of the lake, as if something massive had just breached the surface, only to disappear instantly. He'd scan the water, but see nothing. He dismissed it as a large fish, maybe a sturgeon. A few days later, he was swimming about 20 yards from shore. The water was frigid but refreshing. As he treaded water, he got that feeling, that primal, electric sensation of being watched. He slowly turned a full circle, scanning the empty shoreline, the dense forest, the vacant cabin. The feeling didn't come from shore. It felt like it was coming from below, from the dark, silent depths beneath his kicking feet. He swam back to the dock faster than he ever had in his life. That night, he couldn't sleep. He sat in the living room, reading by the light of a single lamp. The cabin was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator. That's when he heard the sound, a soft, wet, dragging noise on the wooden deck that surrounded the cabin. His heart hammered in his chest. He crept to the window and peered through the blinds. The porch light was off, and the moonlight barely cut through the thick canopy of trees. He couldn't see anything. The dragging sound stopped right below his window. He held his breath, listening. For a full minute, there was only silence. Then a soft, deliberate tap, tap, tap on the glass, right where his face was. Ethan stumbled back, knocking over a chair. He scrambled for the heavy fireplace poker, his mind racing. Bear? Raccoon? No animal taps on a window. He spent the rest of the night huddled in the corner of the room, listening to the silence, which was now more terrifying than the noise had been. The next day, in the bright, unforgiving sunlight, he went outside to check. There, on the dusty deck, were wet trails. Not footprints. It looked like someone had dragged a dripping, heavy net or something all the way from the shoreline to his window. And in the thin layer of grime on the window pane, he saw it. A faint, smudged handprint, except it was too long. The fingers were impossibly thin and stretched, and there were no distinguishable knuckles. He knew then he couldn't stay, but before he left, his curiosity got the better of him. Inside the cabin, on a dusty bookshelf, was a collection of old photo albums. He started flipping through one from the 1970s. It was full of smiling faces, big fish, and sunny days at the lake. Then he found a photo that made his blood run cold. It was a picture of the family's grandfather, standing proudly on the dock, holding up a massive trout. But in the background, in the deep water just behind him, you could just make out a shape. It was pale and indistinct, but it looked unnervingly like a human face under the water, staring right at the camera. The caption, written in faded ink, read, "Dad's big catch. The lake is always watching." Ethan packed his bags and left that day. He never told the family the real reason he quit. Some things are better left undisturbed. It's one of those unexplained encounters that makes you wonder what's really resting at the bottom of our most beautiful, tranquil lakes. From the isolation of the wilderness Our next story brings us to a place that's supposed to be the epitome of safety, a manicured, friendly suburb. This story shows how some of the most unsettling true summertime horror stories don't happen in the dark woods, but right in plain sight. This happened to a young couple, Maya and Tom, during their first summer in their new home. It was a perfect starter house in a quiet cul-de-sac. Their neighbors were friendly, bringing over baked goods and welcoming them to the neighborhood. All except one. The house directly to their left was owned by an elderly man named Mr. Abernathy. He was a recluse. They only ever saw him from distance. He was tall and stooped, always wearing a wide-brimmed hat that shadowed his face. But the strangest thing about him was his garden. It was immaculate, perfectly tended roses, lush vegetable patches, but he only ever worked on it at night. Every night, like clockwork, around 1 or 2 a.m., Maya or Tom would be woken by the soft snip, snip, snip of garden shears. They'd look out their bedroom window and see him, a stooped silhouette, moving slowly through his yard under the faint glow of a single solar lamp. It was weird, but they figured he was just an eccentric old man who didn't like the summer heat. The real unease started with the scarecrow. He placed it in the middle of his tomato patch one July morning. But it wasn't a normal scarecrow made of straw and old clothes. This one was realistic. It was dressed in a long, dark coat and trousers, with a burlap sack for a head. But its posture was strange. It was slumped over in a way that seemed too natural, too heavy. One sweltering afternoon, Maya was watching it from her kitchen window. There was no wind, but she could have sworn she saw the scarecrow's head twitch. Just a tiny, sharp movement. She blinked, telling herself it was the heat playing tricks on her eyes. The nightly gardening continued. But now, they noticed his routine included the scarecrow. He would spend long periods of time standing in front of it, sometimes seeming to adjust its clothes, other times just standing there, staring at it in the dark. The breaking point came during a late August heat wave. Maya couldn't sleep. The air was thick and still. She went to the window and saw Mr. Abernathy in his garden as usual. But he wasn't pruning roses. He had a small watering can and was standing in front of the scarecrow. He tilted the can, and she watched, horrified, as he appeared to pour water onto the burlap sack head, as if giving it a drink. Then he did something else. He reached into his pocket and pulled out what looked like a spoon. He gently lifted the bottom of the burlap sack and brought the spoon up to where a mouth would be. Maya felt sick. She grabbed her phone and zoomed in as far as the camera would go. The image was grainy, but it was clear enough. The scarecrow wasn't slumped on a cross of wood. It was tied to a single metal pole, and its limbs, they weren't filled with straw. They were just limbs. The proportions were all wrong for a dummy, but horribly right for a malnourished person. She called the police. She explained what she saw, trying not to sound crazy. An hour later, a cruiser pulled up quietly. The officers went to Mr. Abernathy's door. They were there for a long time. Eventually, they came out with Mr. Abernathy in handcuffs. He was calm, his face still shadowed by his hat. A few minutes later, paramedics arrived and went into the backyard with a stretcher. They came back with a figure on it, covered by a white sheet. It wasn't the scarecrow. The scarecrow was gone. The pole that had been tied to was empty. They never found out who the person was or what exactly had happened. The official story was that Mr. Abernathy was suffering from severe dementia and was caring for a lifelike mannequin. But Maya knows what she saw. She saw him feeding it. She saw it twitch. They sold the house and moved before winter came. It's terrifying to think what can happen behind closed doors, or in this case, a garden fence. For our final story, we head back into the wild. Many of you who enjoy the outdoors have probably shared scary camping stories around a fire, but usually they're just that, stories. The account I'm about to share is from a woman who lived one. Her name is Claire, and she's an experienced hiker. One June, she decided to do a solo 3-day trek through a well-known but rugged national forest. She had her map, her compass, her GPS, and enough supplies for a week. She was prepared. The first day was perfect. The trail was beautiful, and she felt strong. She made camp by a stream and fell asleep to the sounds of the forest. The second day, she hiked deeper into a section of the park known as Echo Canyon. As the name suggests, it was famous for its acoustics. She was walking along a high ridge in the early afternoon when she decided to test it out. She stopped, took a deep breath, and yelled, "Hello." From across the canyon, a perfect echo came back. "Hello." She grinned. She tried again. "Beautiful day." The echo returned, just as clear. "Beautiful day." She kept walking, enjoying the novelty. A few minutes later, she stumbled on a loose rock and muttered to herself, "Whoa, careful." From the canyon, the echo came back. "Whoa, careful." She froze. She hadn't shouted that. She'd said it barely above a whisper. There's no way an echo could have picked that up so perfectly. A chill went down her spine. She stood dead still, listening. The forest was silent. She told herself it was another hiker, someone playing a joke. She shouted, "Is someone there?" The reply came back, in a perfect imitation of her own voice, laced with a strange, lilting curiosity. "Is someone there?" "Stop it," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "It's not funny." The mimic's voice returned, but this time it was different. It sounded distorted, mocking. "Not funny." Claire's heart was pounding. This wasn't another hiker. The sound was coming from all around her now, not just from across the canyon. It was as if the forest itself was speaking to her. She pulled out her map and compass, her hand shaking. She just needed to keep moving, get out of the canyon. She started walking, faster now. "Leave me alone," she whispered. And from right behind her, her voice, whispered back, "Alone." She broke into a run. As she ran, the voice kept up with her. But it started saying things she hadn't said, things to make her panic. "Wrong way." It chirped playfully from her left. She glanced at her compass. The trail was straight ahead. "Look out!" it shrieked from above. She flinched, but there was nothing there. It was trying to confuse her, to lead her off the trail. As the sun began to set, casting long, terrifying shadows, the voice became more frantic, more desperate. "Help me!" it cried, sounding exactly like her, but as if she were in terrible pain. "I'm lost. Over here." The voice came from deep within the woods, away from the marked path. Claire knew it was a trap. Every instinct screamed at her to run towards the sound of her own voice, crying for help. But her logical mind, her training, told her to trust the compass. She closed her eyes, took a deep breath, ignored the phantom cries, and kept moving straight along the trail. She hiked all through the night, not daring to stop. The voice eventually faded, replaced by the normal sounds of the forest, but she didn't feel safe until the sun rose and she saw the ranger station in the distance. When she finally stumbled in, dehydrated and exhausted, she told the ranger what happened. The old man just nodded slowly. He told her she wasn't the first. Local legend called it the Canyon Mimic. A few hikers had gone missing in that section over the years, always after reporting hearing strange voices. They were the ones who, he guessed, had listened to the voice instead of their compass. Claire was just one of the lucky ones who got away. 3 stories. 3 perfect summer settings twisted into places of fear. A lake that watches, a neighbor with a horrifying secret, and a voice in the woods that leads you to your doom. It's a chilling reminder that even in the brightest of seasons, we should never let our guard down completely. The world is full of mysteries, and some of them are waiting for us when we are at our most relaxed. Thank you for joining me in the shadows tonight. If these stories gave you a chill, and if you made it this far, please do me a huge favor and hit that like button. It really helps the channel. And if you want to hear more stories like these, make sure you subscribe and ring that notification bell so you don't miss our next descent into the dark. Stay safe out there, and be careful what you listen for in the quiet of a summer night.